My name is Jerome Ferry. My cameraman is Alan Eggers. We're doing a part 2 of 2 video interview with Marjorie Kopecek Nejdl, who will be showing and explaining her love of egg art in an old, rich tradition from the old country, in her case, Czechoslovakia. Marge, in your first tape, we talked about your interest in egg art, but let's just recap a little here. When did you become interested in this type of art, and how did you become interested in it?
Well, when I was a little girl, my uncle lived next door to us, and it was usually the ladies that did the egg decorating. And he always watched his mother and his sister over in Europe to do the eggs, and he decided that he could do this. And we lived next door to each other, and he would set the dies up, and my cousin, his daughter, and I, and my mother, we used to decorate eggs together, and I thought this is the way everybody did their egg decorating. It's an old art, an old custom. I might start back that most of your European countries were found to have decorated eggs. It was recorded that decorated eggs have been around for over 2,000 years.
It wasn't unique to Bohemia or Czechoslovakia then?
No, it was not. You're probably familiar with Ukrainians. They call them pisanki, and the Czechs call them kraslice. And basically it's the same method, except that the Ukrainians have more of a geometric design, where the Czechs have a lot of hearts and flowers. And it depended on what area you came from, what was available for you to use the raw materials, such as beeswax from the bees, wheat, as we talked about, the wheat, straw decorated eggs from the agricultural part, because they were able to get the wheat. The scratched eggs, just an old penknife where they dyed the egg and then scratched the design on there. And also they used natural dyes from weeds, grasses, onion skins, whatever was available to them.
What type of eggs are we talking about?
Basically, we're talking about chicken eggs and duck and goose eggs. I've gone on with the ostrich eggs and the rhea eggs, but they think that this method originally started with the nobility dyeing their tapestries and draperies. And of course, batik method originally started in China. But the peasants didn't have those material things, such as their draperies and whatever. So they applied the same basic method to their eggs. And this was some way that they could bring a little artistry into their life. And going way back before pre-Christian times, they decorated eggs, and the designs on the eggs had a meaning to them. Say a continuous line around the egg, I guess it isn't, meant eternity. If you draw the line around the egg, a complete circles. Anyway, they did tell stories, and then after Christ was born, the missionaries used the decorated egg to bring the peasants into Christianity. I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
No, you're not. No. Do you concentrate? What I was going to ask you was this tradition mainly around the Easter time?
Yes.
This would have been done.
It would have. It started out for the spring season, because the egg, they represented new life, and spring was new life, rebirth, grass turned green, everything was starting up all over again. And so this is how it got started, because it was during the spring season, and then when Christ was born, they just brought that into the picture of doing the eggs for Easter.
Is this tradition still carried on in the old country?
More so probably now than during communist time, because the communists didn't encourage them to know about their culture and to know their heritage, and they didn't have the time to do it. And now that they're realizing this is was almost a lost art, there are more people doing it, and it's a fun art.
Mm-hmm. Could you give us a little show and tell here?
Certainly can. You start out with a fresh raw egg. This has got a lot of marks on it. We'll do another one. And I usually wash my eggs with a baking soda rinse.
Why?
Because store-bought eggs sometimes have a coating on it and it doesn't want to take the dye. So gently you wash them, and not hard, you don't want to make any scratch marks on there, but gently wash them with baking soda water and then rinse them.
What will scratch marks do?
Scratch marks does not, it prevents the dye from taking it evenly. And you still find different marks on the egg from different, there's no reason, I guess, I don't know. But you want to give it a chance to be even.
If you had oily skin,
Yes.
would this be a problem?
Yes, the oils from your hands will get onto the egg, and it doesn't take the dye evenly either. So you start out with the fresh raw egg. Oh, by the way, I learned as a child, this is not my original idea. My mother said that when she was a kid and they didn't have the electricity to melt everything, they took a potato and an old spoon and bent it and held it over a candle. And I learned by dipping a quill pen into the melted wax out of the spoon and drawing on the egg. So now I feel I've graduated. They have what they call, in English it's a stylus. The Ukrainians call it a kiska, and the Czechs call it a stushka. And it's like a little well. You put your beeswax into this little well, melt it over a flame, and draw your design on the egg with the wax. You can sketch on the egg with the pencils. You have to do it lightly. But one of the no-nos is never erase. So if you make a mistake, you work around your mistake and incorporate it on the same side. But where I'm putting this wax, that's going to remain white no matter what dye I put it into, because that wax on there prevents the dye from going through. After I've drawn a complete design on the egg, let's do a couple of petals here.
When you find if you make a mistake, then you just try to incorporate it into
Into
your
your
design
yes.
to cover it up.
We had classes here last Saturday, and the lady made a great big gob of wax on her eggs. I said, turn the egg over and make another gob on the other side. That's the only thing you can do with that. Okay, I'm finished the design on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step is to put it in the lightest dye, and that would be yellow. Okay.
This
With-
dye, is this regular Easter egg dye or a
This
special
happens
solution?
to be an egg dye, but you can use any kind of a water-based dye if you want to make it with your own food coloring and vinegar. I originally started with like Pa's egg decorating kits, but they've gotten so that they're so weak in the color, and as you can see how brilliant and vibrant these dyes are. So after it comes out of the yellow, everything that I want to remain yellow, I cover with wax. And to complete an egg, it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 to how many hours. It depends on how intricate your design is. So everything that I want to remain yellow, I cover with wax. And the egg has to be completely dry so that that wax adheres to the egg. Where I'm putting that wax, that's going to remain yellow because the next dye won't penetrate through. It's preserving that color. You almost have to think backwards. You don't want to use your background color in your design because that will be your last color. And so you go through the whole thing. Let's move on to another one.
Is each design an original design you're just coming up with because of your experience with doing this, or do you try to follow some set?
I guess it's a little bit of both. I've taken some designs from costumes, the embroidering on the costumes. I've taken designs from just any kind of a Czech folk art, but I always did like to do that. I don't know if it was inborn in me. I like to think so because I was raised in a Czech family. But I always doodled, and I did little Czech folk flowers and things like that. And so, as I mentioned before, each design had its own meaning. I think that each artist has their own input in there, and I see something and I think, oh, I'll just make it into a check flower and do some changing around. And all right, now this one has been in the white and the yellow and the green, and everything that I want to remain green now, I would cover with wax. And usually for demonstrating, I change to a brush so that we can get through the whole method. But now where I'm putting this wax, that's preserving that green color, and I would go through the whole thing. And usually after the green, I put it in water to lighten it up so that I can go on with my reds, because your greens and reds are not compatible. Let's go to this one. This was just a demonstrator egg, and I'll melt this. And when I'm demonstrating, I change to a brush just to get the large amounts of wax on there. Yep, have to wait. While we're doing that, I'll quick draw something on here so that you can see how that is. And as I said before, that it was usually the ladies that did the egg decorating. And if they came up with a pretty brilliant, some kind of a different dye, that was kept a family secret and passed on from generation to generation.
Like how to make a particular color.
Yes, yes. If they found some kind of a berry that gave them a different pink or whatever, why they didn't broadcast that around. That was a family secret.
Was beet juice ever used?
Yes, yes. And an interesting story about the making of the dyes. My husband decided he'd make me a brilliant, dark, rich brown out of
Walnut, perhaps?
walnuts. And he did make the dye. But I had brown hands, brown cloth, and that brown did not come out of my hands for a long time, so I decided enough of that. And one thing about these that are water soluble, it comes out of the cloths easier than it does off your hands. So you can wash this and they'll wash it out. Okay, I think this is melted enough so that you can see I'm going to cover a dark area here. And I won't complete this, but I will put it into the dark color so that you can see.
Mm-hmm.
And different villages had different customs celebrating their Easter time, and I'll do a noise from the rekatachka in a minute.
The different designs, would they be followed through as far as the decorations on their clothing or their dresses?
Yes.
And
Originally, you could tell what area the costume came from by the color and the design, and the same held true for their eggs. You could tell what area the egg came from just by the method and the designs on the egg. And the Monday after Easter, the children of some different villages played a game where they chased the girls. The boys would chase the girls in the morning with this willow whip that they had braided, and if he captured an egg from that girl, he would keep that, and in the afternoon the girls would chase the boys and reverse it. But if this girl had an eye on for this one fellow and she didn't collect her egg back, sometimes that meant they were engaged. So see, there was women's lib way back there. In another area, they made what was called this rekatachka. I'm going to, no, I won't. And a few days before Easter, are you ready for this? They would bring that every 4 hours instead of as the bell tolled at the church, they would do the rekatachka. And of course, they had the different special Easter foods, and one of them, this is just one of many, is the lamb cake. And that was like also a symbol of spring because the lambs were usually lambing at springtime and they made the cakes.
Was that made to eat or for decoration?
That was made to eat. Oh, and then the eggs also, that brings up another interesting. They made the eggs, these decorated eggs were given as gifts. And they also just dyed the eggs, boiled eggs, for eating with the different skins and things. But all the eggs were taken to church on Friday night and they were all blessed. So that each egg as a gift had a meaning for this person and they were special. Okay, are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
We'll just put this one in the black dye so that you can see the difference. And this is where I always like it with the kids because I tell them it's magic. I've got the beeswax on the red and on the blue, and it was on the yellow. So my background color will be black. And it doesn't take very long for these dyes to is it starting to take?
This ink, this is something you can put a lid on tight and
Yes.
keep it for some time?
Yes. I usually get about 3 dozen eggs out of a batch of dyes. Now, the blue and the red, and this would be my background color. The next step is to take that wax off. So, and this is the one I don't like.
This is where you burn your fingers?
This is where you burn your fingers. Holding it over a flame, you're going to melt that wax so that it would be back to the same form as when you put it on.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to work quickly because you don't want to cook the inside of the egg.
Now,
And so you can see the difference here,
Oh, yeah,
the blue and the red.
brilliant colors.
Mhm.
Does this egg contain the yolk and the
Yes,
yellow?
the next step is to blow them out. And we used to put a hole in each end and stir them and blow. And now, I wish I had invented this. We have what's called a one-hole egg blower.
Do you ever reach your arm over the Bunsen burner and set
Yes.
your clothes on fire?
Yes, I've done that before. It's not fun. You put a hole in the bottom of the egg, and I take a little wire and stir it, and then put this little one-hole egg blower in and blow it out, and all the contents come out. Now, some of them will rinse the egg out, but I'm very careful because any kind of a water or the inside of the egg will take your dyes off because these are water-based dyes. And now, instead of doing this with the flame, when I'm working on about 5 or 6 eggs at a time, Ed had a little rack made for me out of a cookie sheet, a little board with wires up on it. I will blow the eggs out first and then put them on the wire and put them in an oven, slow oven, and I watch so that when that wax starts melting, I take it out real quick and wipe it off instead of holding it over them. So I've sort of reversed the last 2 stages of the egg decorating.
Does a person need any special skill to
Well,
do this, or is
I teach the classes at the museum, and I always guarantee them an egg if they don't break it. Because we do it step by step. It helps to have some artistic ability. But I had an 8-year-old boy in the class last week, and he was so pleased with his, because what I do is teach him step by step by step, and just putting on the different lines. And so it helps to have the artistic ability, but we do an egg without it also.
what age group do you find that's interested now in this type of art? The young or the old?
You know, there really is no age set to the interested in art, in this egg artistry. They're interested in it from any age. We've had old people and young people alike. Because it was, as I said before, it was sort of considered a lost art until we started teaching. It was in 1972 when they started talking about your heritage and your roots. And I was to do an egg demonstration when they had their first Czech folk art festival here. And my uncle was to do the egg demonstration, but by then his health was failing him, and so he volunteered me, but he neglected to tell me about it. And so this lady called me, and she's telling me different times, and I says, Melvine, I don't know what you're talking about. She says, while you're doing the egg demonstration, didn't you know? And at the time, I was a little upset because I was teaching gymnastics at Sokos, and my boys were young, but I'm ever so thankful that they got me started again, because it's been my life ever since. And then I, through the Iowa Arts Council, as I said, they decided this was an art, and I take on apprentices.
You were talking about blowing eggs. Is it necessary to blow them?
Oh, no. Some areas of the countries leave their eggs whole after they're finished. They just leave them whole, and they will eventually dry up. Sometimes it takes a year or 2 years, depending on the egg, but they will eventually dry up.
Would it be advantageous not to blow the egg while you're working on it because
Yes.
of the weight?
You start out, the method with the beeswax, the batik method that we talked about, you use a raw egg because you need the weight of the egg to hold it down in the dyes. Now, some people do blow theirs out and then seal the ends, but I found that no matter how you seal them, a lot of that dye will seep through, and then when you're working on the next color, you're having dye seep through, and it does make a bigger mess. So the batik method, you blow the eggs out afterwards. Those that are painted, such as this and this, I blow them out first and then paint them. And what's fun is that it used to be just Easter time, and I'm finding I'm doing eggs all year round for birthday gifts, wedding gifts, babies' gifts, and it's just a fun ride
Any special occasion?
that comes along.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's several different methods here. These with the white outline are done with this beeswax batik method. This is an interesting one because it's done
What is
with
batik?
batik is the method of the dyeing with the wax and dyes. And it's B-A-T-I-K, and like I said, it was originally started, I think, in China, either China or India. They're kind of debating who was first. This is another method where they take straw and cut the straw into different designs and then glue that on the egg. And it depended on what area you came from if the straw was available for you. This is another method where it's called a stained glass egg. You draw your design on the egg with the melted wax, the dark wax, that's what the dark lines are. And instead of melting it off at the end, then you leave that wax on there and you paint around the wax. And it has this raised motif on there so that it's like a stained glass. This is another method where you do paint the egg one solid color, then you take a penknife and you scratch the designs off, leaving the white eggshell coming through to make your designs. And then this, I just took some dye and put it on there to cover it. The different sizes of the eggs. The chicken and duck eggs. These are goose eggs. And these are rhea, R-H-E-A eggs. They're a bird similar to an ostrich but smaller. And this is an ostrich egg. And something interesting about ostrich eggs is that their shell is so hard, it's almost like a ceramic shell. Now, I've never done an ostrich egg with the dye method because, first of all, you have to get the tubs large enough to put the dyes in. But they also have some sort of it's almost like a shiny, reminds me of a ceramic.
Enamel-like.
Yeah, almost like a ceramic egg. And so I'm sure you'd have to take some of that shine off before it would take the dyes.
What's the smallest egg you've done?
The small egg is a quail egg. And I order those. I don't rob any bird's nests. I do rob the goose eggs. But I don't the quail eggs. And this is another method. This is also a batik method with the beeswax and the dyes. But what they use here is a little tool with a pin stuck into the end of it.
I'm like a stylus.
Yeah, and you dip that into the beeswax, and then you just make like a little comma mark on here. And the white is what I started on the fresh egg, and then the green and the purple.
Could you hold that so Alan can pick up that design on the
Okay. And it's just done by dipping the wax, making comma marks, and then it goes into the dye, and then the next time you make your comma mark the other way from there, by dipping and setting it down and whipping it up.
What is the one with the mallard duck on it?
Okay, this is really not
That is
traditional,
beautiful.
but I can show you another one. I'll take this off. These are called lace cut eggs. I use a drill similar to a dentist drill. And I draw my design on the egg, and then I make sure that there's connecting parts here, because you can drill away and then your egg's broken in half instead of your design. But you drill away the parts that you don't want in your design. And so these are fragile, and as I say, they're not traditional, but I enjoy doing them. There's another one out in front there. And as you can see that the Rhea eggs, the shells are very hard and brittle, so you really have to work quickly. When I first started out, I used a Dremel tool, and I broke more than I finished, and I said, that's enough of this. And my husband really enjoyed these, so for Christmas he bought me an air drill and set it up, and so he did all the setting up. All I had to do was just draw there and drill them out. And I guess there's less breakage because the RPMs are faster than on a Dremel.
Do you make these to sell and to make money, or is this something you got more love into it and you find yourself giving them away more so?
I do give away a lot. But when I first started, it was just for family and that I enjoyed doing it. And then when I was approached to sell them, I thought, I don't want to sell that. That's my egg. But I do sell through the museum gift shop now. Not as many as they probably would like to have, because they're always asking me if I have any eggs to sell.
Do you still find yourself becoming attached to a special one?
Oh yes, oh yes.
Even though you've been doing it for how many years now?
Yes,
1972?
72 is when I started doing it.
31 years?
And as I said, I did it as a kid, but doing it professionally, I started in 72 to go back to it, and then it was in 1982 that I really became more proficient with it and traveled with the eggs.
Does your grandchildren have any interest in this?
Surprisingly, yes. Well, I did teach the boys. I have 2 sons, and I did teach the boys to do them, and they did do a nice job. It's just that it takes time and patience, and right now they're busy in their lives earning a living, and so they don't have the time. So I think eventually, I hope eventually, that they will come back to this. At least they know about it, and it is part of their heritage.
I can imagine this was something in the old country. There was no television, probably there was no radio.
Yes, yes.
And this is how they spent their evening hours when
Yes, yes.
in the cold winter months.
And what I do when I'm painting with with him, I get books on tape, and I like to sit and listen. And
It's like crocheting or...
yes, yeah.
Who made your lovely smock?
Oh, I did.
Oh.
This happens to be braid from the Czech Republic that I purchased when we were there, I think, and just made an old smock.
Marge, when someone asks you to make one of these eggs for a special occasion, I imagine these are something coveted that's probably passed down or put away and protected, and they pass it on to their grandchildren. And
A lot of them are. And an egg is an egg is an egg. If you protect it and set it up somewhere where it's not going to get jostled and that. We have eggs in the museum exhibit that are over 100 years old, so it depends on how you treat that egg.
You've had a very rich history in this egg art, and I don't want you to be modest because I want you to tell it like it was, but you painted some eggs for some very important people. you were telling me about the Archduke
That
of
was
Austria.
that was my first professional, I guess, commission to do a job for somebody that was taking an egg for the Archduke of, I forgot what Austria. And he had specific designs that he wanted on there, the double-tailed lion and the two-headed eagle, bird. But there were things that happened in history that he wanted on this egg. It took me forever to do this egg, and I said, after I finished, I said, how are you going to get this egg to Austria? You're not mailing it, are you? He said, oh no, I'm hand delivering it. And so he showed me how he was going to take it. You know those wire little cages that you put over light bulbs when you're working in a garage or whatever? That's what he did. He packed that egg into that little wire cage and he hand carried it.
I think you said that was in 1979.
Yes, 1979. That was my first really professional egg for somebody that, other than our local area people.
How about the First Lady, Mrs. Bush?
Mrs. Bush, that was before she was the First Lady. Most of these, I've been so fortunate working with the museum. Most of these have come from being commissioned from the museum for guests that have been here at the museum.
That's how they found out about you.
Yes, yes. I think the most exciting one, maybe no, I guess they were all exciting, but one of the most exciting in 1995 when we had the dedication of the new museum, and there were 3 presidents here, President Clinton and President Havel and the Slovak president, and I was commissioned to do an egg for each one of them as a gift from the museum. I had to have them here 12 hours before they were to arrive because they were going to x-ray the eggs to make sure that they were all right through the FBI and all this. And I said, an egg is an egg. There's nothing in there but an egg, Al. Well, they still had to do that.
You have a couple
Oh,
of
and then I got to present the eggs. So that was fun, too.
Yes, I can imagine it
Yes.
was. And I understand you have 2 of them in the Smithsonian Institution.
Oh, that was fun, too, when they first arrived. And they sent wooden eggs out. This was to be for their collection of the egg, Easter egg. Come in. Anyway, here comes the box. And I had no idea what this was all about to begin with. And I just read quick White House. And there used to be a White House motel in Mount Vernon. And I thought, what am I getting from this motel? And I opened it up and found out there was a letter in there from the First Lady, Mrs. Reagan, and invited to paint eggs for their collection for the White House. The White House. Oh, the White House. Oh, okay.
Did you ever paint a ostrich egg?
Yes. I don't remember what year, but they were...
1990, I think.
Okay, when the museum was starting up, before we had this new building, that's when we were still in the little building. By the way, I was on the board of the museum from 1986 to 1996. And so I was fortunate to get in on a lot of little tidbits here. Mm-hmm. They were sending an egg to President Havel as a gift from this museum, and the actor Don DeFore, he was part Czech, and he was here, and he was asking to take gifts over there, and so one of the gifts was an ostrich egg for President Havel. And he delivered it. Don DeFore delivered it.
And one time you painted a rhea egg for the Czech ambassador?
Oh, yes, yes. And that was a type of this, and I'm not sure, remember what all was on there, but we found out what region she was, and so that I did paint a costume couple on from the area that she was representing.
Mm-hmm. And you designed the logo for the Czech Museum,
Yes.
didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
It's too bad there isn't one in this room. We
Yes.
could pan the camera on it.
I'm sorry I didn't bring that along.
And I think you told me that you were commissioned to paint one for an astronaut.
Yes.
1996.
We had Eugene
Cernan?
Cernan, and in Czech it'd be Chunman. And he was here, and so I was commissioned to paint an egg for him, and also I was fortunate enough to present it to him. It's been fun.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've been asked to put on many demonstrations.
Oh, I can't, numerous demonstrations. I used to go to the schools and do them in the schools, but it got to be so much because, word of mouth, and I could be out every day doing an egg demonstration at the school. So I've sort of limited to that, to special groups that are going to be doing the art or that are visiting the museum, and I do a lot of them setting up at the museum for different tour groups when they request it. But I did have to finally put a limit to it because I just couldn't do it every day.
Is it pretty much local, or have you been asked out of county, out of state to go?
Yes. The last one was to go teach through the North Dakota Arts Council. I taught classes at Dickinson, North Dakota. That's probably the farthest one, besides going to Smithsonian, which we talked about before.
Yeah. Marge, unless you have anything else to share with us, the Linn County Historical Society, the Cedar Rapids Museum of History, would like to thank you very much for sharing this memories in your program and your love of your art. And I promise you, your Czech Museum will receive a copy of this film.
I thank you, because this was an art that was lost and now will revive.